In my experience, it's 1 to 2, maybe 3 things in a calendar quarter that are the real needle movers in the business.
Welcome to Growth Sparks, the podcast for health and wellness entrepreneurs and practitioners. Here we dive into founder stories, strategies, and innovations that shape this dynamic industry. I'm your host, Riza Javellana, and today I'm happy to be joined by Garrett Marshall, founder and CEO of Wellbuilt Ventures. Welcome, Garrett.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really curious about Wellbuilt Ventures. What do you do and how do you partner with fitness and wellness entrepreneurs?
Wellbuilt Ventures, I describe as a growth development firm. So we help S&B wellness businesses grow and scale in the intelligence era. My background is digital health, fit tech, and wellness. So I'm just going to call that fitness and wellness. And in our industry, the idea of having a formal growth function in the org chart design is still relatively new in comparison to bigger industries like consumer packaged goods, food and beverage, whatever it may be. Having this formal growth function that sits horizontal across the org chart and basically unifies all of the conventional silos in your business. So think marketing, sales, biz dev, product, customer experience, et cetera, so that they are all working collectively. In my experience, it's 1 to 2, maybe 3 things in a calendar quarter that are the real needle movers in the business. So that's what we do. Typically, this is not a hard and fast rule, but it seems to be a little bit of a sweet spot. Our ICP, ideal customer profile, be like a pre-private equity business. So we're not really working with like startups. We are working with businesses that clearly have product market fit, prove the concept, they're growing. Most of the time, I would say they've had good growth in the past, but they're looking to formalize that. They are thinking about raising institutional money. Maybe they're looking at their next liquidity or exit event, and they really need to formalize their growth so that a future buyer or investor can look at that and really feel confident in the trajectory of the business.
That's awesome. And you have to have a very rich background within the wellness industry space to be able to do this. Tell me about the trajectory of your career. What's the background that makes you a great partner to be able to do this?
Well, made a lot of mistakes. So at bare minimum, I can help our partners and clients avoid things that I've done wrong. But I've had the advantage of spending my entire professional career in this industry, which is something like 22 years now. I also find it a big benefit to have sat on both sides of the fence, so to speak, in the industry. I've worked as a vendor to the industry multiple times. I've also worked on the operator side, having spent probably more than 10 years, depending on how you do the math, and the largest retail fitness operators in the world, 2 of which are both publicly traded companies now. It obviously makes it natural and easy to really understand and speak to the pain points when you've had the opportunity to sit on both sides of the aisle.
That's great. And tell me about your ICP. You talked about companies who are about to maybe go into a public offering. Would these normally be 20 to 100 employees, or are we talking about 10 employees? What's the size of your ICP?
Great question. Typically, we are having a lot of success with pre-private equity, so smaller than IPO companies, obviously. The amount of employees can vary depending on what product category the company is in, but these are not hard and fast rules. But in terms of company size, somewhere in the range of 10 to 30 million in revenue. And one of the reasons I think that's the case is our ICP is big enough that they want to continue to scale and they want predictable growth. So they're not thinking about like, how do we create value for the customer? They've already figured all that stuff out. But they're smaller than a business that it would make more sense to in-house this growth function. So they outsource it to us. Does that make sense? Because really in the growth function, at bare minimum, 4 or 5 competencies that you need, right? You need kind of a midfielder who understands growth across the different silos of the business. I often play that role. So almost always in our client businesses, we are reporting to the CEO, directly to the CEO. Oftentimes I will play that role. And having been a CEO myself, I've had many years to understand the nuances of how every part of the business works, from FP&A to customer experience to product to engineering, because I've ran two software engineering businesses, to business development, which I've done myself hands-on. I've built sales teams. I had one business that I was the founder and CEO of. It did business in 35 countries, where we had an headquarters in Minneapolis, an office in Brisbane, Australia, an office in London, England. And so business development, sales, all of it. So in a growth team, if you will, you need that kind of midfielder that has that cross-functional experience. But you're also going to need somebody that kind of wears the marketing hat and understands the
Mhm.
deep, as you would, the intricacies, even at the lowest level of the marketing function, customer acquisition, maybe another way to say it. And then you're going to need some like engineering and technical chops in most of the time, because I'm sure that this would resonate with you. If you're thinking of, and you've experienced this even at a higher level than I have, way higher level, but in a large company like Mattel, as an example, it's great to have a good idea. But if you can't operationalize that or have the thing built, then it's going to go nowhere. And in today's hyper competitive intelligence era, you've got to also not just be able to build it, right? So that's where you need kind of the engineering mindset who can translate an idea into requirements or user stories. But most business, really all businesses, they have to be agile. So once you launch the thing, how quickly can we get feedback from the market to determine whether or not we should gas or brake? That also requires technical acumen, right? Because, like they say, number one, you can't manage what you can't measure. So if you don't have empirical feedback and data and analytics, you don't know how successful, what your ROI is, or how successful your hypothesis actually is. But beyond that, and many companies, by the way, don't even have that, right? They don't have the real-time analytics to look at leading indicators of their business. But the other thing is, and again, going back to your experience, I'm sure you sat in boardroom tables, conference room tables, and ran into this issue. You have to have integrity and believe in the data that you're seeing, because you could use numbers to tell a lot of different stories. And so our ICP, they're not big enough yet where they can go out and hire that team of 5 to 7 people to start with, go get those core competencies or those skill sets and in-house that function in their business. And another thing that's very common, which is not necessarily tied to company size, but in our industry, you have leaders who aren't familiar with a growth function. If you are going to build a business today in the technology sector, this is going to be a pillar of your DNA from day one. Tech companies know this, but in fitness and wellness, where you have leaders who have been in the industry for 20, 30 plus years, even if they could afford to in-house the growth function, they may not personally have the skill set to actually manage that. And so
Sure.
these are all things that factor into finding that target customer and perfect customer.
Yeah. So you have to be able to, one, relate very well to the CEO, but also have buy in across the different functions as you work collectively to come up with that overarching strategy for growth. How do you actually get buy in from the different department leads and get full cooperation? Because sometimes there could be some conflicts. For example, marketing, isn't that my job to grow the product, the business? With you coming in as a third party, does that normally create conflict? And how do you get buy in from everyone?
That's a fantastic question, because all the scientific aspects of what we do, where it's just black and white and it's numbers, you can say like this did well or didn't do well. That's There's never any arguing with that. But this is where the art comes in, because,
Mhm.
and quite frankly, I will use this as a qualifier to taking on new business, because it, a client who doesn't have a well articulated strategic planning process in place, we can be sometimes be pouring kerosene on a fire in a bad way, if that makes sense. Because if that doesn't exist, it can create the situation that you're talking about where for both the customer and for us, we feel like we're hacking at the leaf, but never getting to the root of the issue. So what I try to look for are businesses that have a dynamic and successful strategic planning process already implemented in their company. And so basic things like the quantitative targets for both the business as a whole and then for each department need to be very clear, right? There has to be unity in what those are, right? So a classic example is a conflict between marketing and sales, where marketing goes, yeah, I'm just falling here, but you'll understand this. We're generating leads, but sales isn't converting. And sales says, you're generating leads, but the leads are bad. That's why they're not converting, right? That doesn't work. So it's the business leaders, the CEO, whoever the leader is, depending on the makeup of the company, to define those quantitative KPIs and North Star metrics that all the departments agree on, right? That once you have that in place, the next important layer is agreement across the departments on what big rocks move the company towards those metrics. And to me, I think that's really fundamental. Sometimes we can facilitate some of this depending on what the scope of our engagement is. But if we're not, then this has to happen before we even show up, right? You've got to get each of the departments in a room together to work through among themselves to negotiate with each other on what let's just say 10, what the 10 big rocks for the year are that are the most important initiatives to drive the company towards the agreed upon metrics. That's the piece that oftentimes doesn't happen. And so you get conflict between departments on what the most important thing is that they should be working on. Right. And this is why the growth function was created in the first place. Because as a business leader or a shareholder in a business, you want to make sure that everybody's aligned. And if there's two or three things, and when we work with companies, we try to constrain those big rocks, if you will, to no more than one or two a quarter, so that it's very clear across the company holistically, these are the two things that we have to execute on this quarter in order to have the greatest likelihood of success. Everything else is extra. And of course, there's tons of extra stuff that departments are working on outside of just those two things. A lot of stuff they're working on that contribute to those two things. But when there's conflict over those ancillary things, if you've done the strategic planning process right, the conflict over these ancillary items shouldn't have a material consequence on the business, because by nature, it's not an imperative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give me an example of how you've successfully turned around a company or achieved that significant growth that they're looking for, such that you arrived at the desired outcome for them?
Let me, without going too far into the weeds, let me hit on two things that I think are common patterns across our customer engagements that tend to be really successful or the most successful. One is, I think that oftentimes we discover our clients do not have these strategic objectives well articulated, meaning that the goals are very generalized. So I'm just going to coattail off of what we were just talking about. It's not well articulated. And if they have a strategic plan, let's say, they had Accenture come in, they paid $250,000, and then it went in some digital folder somewhere, nobody knows where it's at and how to get access to it, right? It's especially the leaders of the department. So if you have a CMO, CTO, CRO, they're not looking at this, and they should have access and transparency to it on an ongoing basis. So that's one big problem. When we can go in and we take that, this is going to sound maybe a little bit trite, but we take that, we make it more comprehensive, and then we literally put it in a system that's accessible to everyone on an ongoing basis. That has a tremendous impact on success because the stakeholders in the business get clarity. The second part of that is the systematized aspect of that strategic plan. The moment you create a strategic plan on day one, something changes. Like competitors launch this, there's a new competitor pops into the marketplace, addressable market changes, whatever the case is. And so the second piece is actually putting it in a system that can adapt and change with the company over time. We have a few different tools that tend to be successful universally that we like to implement if we're solving one of these two problems that we'll implement for our customers that actually tie into their system of record. Let me say it differently, their tech stack for the different departments in their business, so that progress on the work that each department is doing actually ties back to, and there's visibility on the progress. This is kind of vague, but progress towards the strategic plan. So I'll give you an example. And there are a couple of these tools. I'll just give you one specific example. It's called AHA. Great tool. It's literally like light bulb, AHA. It's in a very unique product category because it's strategic planning mixed with project management all in one. But basically, the leadership of a business can go and they can craft this thing out. I mean, it goes very deep. It can go from your vision for the business down to the business model, and then from there down into positioning statements, and then into customer personas, and then all the way down. And it has integrations with tools like CRMs in the sales department, project management tools like Jira or Atlassian, and the dev department, a litany of ESPs for marketing, and so on and so forth. And what it allows a leadership team and a CEO to do is to actually see how the low level work in the company are contributing towards the progress or lack thereof of the strategic planning and the strategic objectives of the business. And one of the other valuable byproducts is that all of those, like I mentioned, customer personas, vision, business model, operations model, competitor profiling, all of that lives in the cloud where it's all permission based, right? But basically, everybody has access to it. And there's an inbuilt, just like a lot of modern software today, there's an inbuilt collaboration suite, right? So if there's a change to something pivotal, like a change to something critical that might impact, let's just say, a competitor, I could drop that comment in and tag you, and we're actually evolving, let's say, the company's business model or some strategic plan, a roadmap item. We're doing it in real time, right? Which is critical. Most companies today, even at the enterprise level, from my experience, they lack that. But we all know that in today's day and age, things are moving extremely quickly. The 0 to 1 product development timeline that could have taken a business 2 years to create a SaaS application 10 years ago can be done in 2 weeks today, thanks to AI features and modern tech. And so it sounds kind of boring. Like a lot of times, the things that we find that have the biggest impact in terms of success with customers is kind of the really boring stuff. It's like the behind the curtain stuff, not the sexy, like industry jargon, big tech, AI, this or that things, the buzzwords that everybody likes to talk about, right? It's these sort of foundational infrastructure things that put the company in a position to operate at high velocity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Sometimes we forget that making sure that the strategic intent or the overarching strategy of the company is even shared and known and is clear. And then how to make sure that all the different levels in the organization truly understand that and execute against that, I think is key. So, to your point, yes, there's a lot of sexy that you can do today, tools that you can use, but it's really back to the foundations of, do you have a clear strategy? Does everyone understand it? Does everyone have clarity? Is everybody executing against that strategy and pivoting as things change? That really gets to the right outcome. At the end of the day, it's making sure everybody's walking the same path and going in the right direction. to achieve success.
Exactly. Yep. Well said.
What has been the hardest part as you go through your business? What has been the unexpected challenge in building well built ventures?
Within Wellbuilt, we actually have, it's not technically a SaaS product, but that's the right way to think about it. It's called Precision Health Platform. This is a tool that came about because it was a need that was repeatedly brought up when we were talking to prospects and our current customers. So we actually built the thing. And now it's not a separate business. It probably will be eventually, but most of the clients that we work with actually use this product. But there are many who use the product that aren't clients on the growth side of our business, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
One of the challenges that we've run into with that product specifically, and also sometimes on the growth side of our business, when I'm talking about the need for this growth function, and I told you before, it's a novel concept in our space, even though it isn't outside in the rest of the world, sometimes there's a lack of urgency. And so sometimes we will have conversations with prospects and the response is very positive. They're like, this is great. Yeah, I get it. I can see out where this is going to go. Da, 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 da. And then you get to the end and they're like, great, okay, whatever the objection is, we're going to go think about it, or we'll think about this for next year's roadmap or whatever. But what that boils down to basically is like a lack of urgency or a lack of priorities. So they think this is something good, but because it's tied to the evolution of our industry, it's not something we need to do right this moment. And so we've revised our approach to not just talk about what we do, but also ask the right questions so that our future customers and prospects can hear themselves say it. That way, we're not selling, we're just asking the right questions so to help bring the prospect or the customer to the realization that there is a cost to not taking action now,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe tell me a little more about Precision Health, the product that you were speaking to for our audience understanding of what this is.
Sure. So, precision health, the thesis behind its evolution was that something like precision health was going to be required for the modern fitness provider to remain relevant in their customers' broader wellness journey. To oversimplify, it is a platform that brings together all of the segments of wellness into one software layer or widget that are non-fitness. So think nutrition, supplementation, personal care, sleep, recovery, mental health, etc. All of the things many of us are already doing in terms of our wellness aspirations, but it brings them together in one platform so that our customer who's a fitness provider can present a more holistic offering. And a key detail is it's not so that they can just increase AOV or ARPU. It's because we believe that in order to be a best in class fitness provider in the future, you actually have to embrace these aspects of your customers' wellness. So, for example, like sleep, right? Like how you prescribe fitness, sleep and quality of sleep is critically important. Same with nutrition, same with mental health. And then you get more nuanced into the metabolism, into cardiovascular health, right? What's happening now is that all of us as consumers, the barrier is being lowered, right? A lot of people are familiar with things like function health, where you can have a membership and you can get lab tests done every quarter,
Yeah.
right? And my experience talking with consumers is that it's changing awareness. Consumers are not familiar with this level of access and detail in conventional healthcare, right? Oftentimes people go to the doctor and they don't think that I have some autonomy. I can ask the doctor for this or that, and he or she can order it. If I want a copy of this for my own records, I can get it. But these direct to consumer brands are changing all of that. Obviously, wearable devices play a huge role. People might be familiar with other services that are more niche in certain product categories, like Viome is one that's really well known as a GI or gut health product provider, right? And so as that consumer awareness and then I think subsequently demand evolves, fitness providers are going to have, they can't be experts in every category. Like if you walk into your local gym and expect that the personal trainers or the fitness professionals there are going to be gut specialists, that's unrealistic. That's like jack of all trades, master of none sort of situation. But what they are going to have to do is they're going to have to learn to increase education and embrace some of this so that they can actually be hyper competitive and best in class fitness providers. So we give them a simple tool. It's a no code tool that they take and they drop it into their tech stack. So imagine a screen. That would be a good way to think of it. Imagine adding a screen to your website and to your mobile app where there are a litany of these ancillary wellness products. So very popular categories on precision health platforms include at-home lab tests. We have
Mm,
a partner who offers full-fledged telehealth. So the telehealth provider is prescribing things like GLP-1s, hormone replacement, various peptides, particularly peptides that are aimed at like recovery and general wellness. We have a partner who does personalized daily vitamins. So you go through an assessment and they build a personal vitamin stack specifically for you as an individual. And then you get those on a monthly supply. They come in like these little sachets. They're like these little individual daily packets where you open it up and you've got a formulation that's specific to you as an individual. And so there are two value propositions that we provide our customer, the fitness provider. One is, of course, that they can generate some incremental and new revenue streams through these product categories. We're just talking about many of their members or subscribers, depending on if they're a digital fitness platform or like a gym, are already investing in these sort of things, just not through them. But that's really not the point. The bigger value proposition is that our customer, the fitness provider, they get all of the data related to how their customers interacting with those various products and services. Of course, all of HIPAA and data privacy and PII, all of that is, of course, enforced. So you as
yeah.
an end user have to obviously allow for that data to be provided. But imagine, for example, let's say you have a personal trainer, you belong to a gym, and you take a lab test, right? And cholesterol is high, or you have a triglycerides issue. That information is critical to how a fitness professional should be
Yeah.
recommending and prescribing fitness regimen to you.
Right.
And so that is the biggest value proposition of what we do is we give the fitness professional and our customer the ability to work with this data. And I'll admit, we're at the early stages of this because for this industry, there's a big growth curve. There's a big ramp there that we have got, if the fitness industry is going to continue to evolve, that the industry has to rise to. Because today's fitness professionals, this is still new. But where there's big challenges, there's also big opportunities. And
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, this is all just so fragmented for people today. Even people like me and some of my peers, where this is our vocation, it's still almost next to impossible to have this information in all these fragmented areas, right? You have a wearable device, you might have a sleep tracker, you're working out with a personal trainer, you're doing on demand fitness, you see your doctor for the conventional healthcare needs. And none of that really speaks together. And that's actually where the most opportunity is. So, my hope is that through Precision Health Platform, our clients will be some of the pathfinders and the innovators who rise to that occasion. And it creates this whole new level of value that the industry can offer to the consumer where they're quite frankly kind of lost today.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly helps them to be able to be more holistic in their offering. And that's what people are looking for now. It's holistic health. Because as you said, the exercises you're doing should work very closely with the nutrition and your sleep and the supplements. So having that seems to be a helpful way of having a holistic offering for consumers that people are looking for, I think, these days, as they're more informed of what's out there.
That's exactly right. And the data in our industry is very clear on that. They say health is the new wealth. 73% of consumers value how they feel over how they look. And this is a big
Right.
change in consumer behavior that has all sorts of ramifications on the role that conventional fitness and wellness have played. It's definitely a transition. I do think that the D2C companies who are leading the way with many of the things we've talked about, they are creating much more awareness of what options are out there for consumers. And I think that that creates a little bit of a flywheel effect because the more awareness that there is, then the more demand for those things follows. And hopefully, the net result of that is we have more people getting healthy than ever before.
Yeah, and I think it's all tied to the fact that people are so much into longevity now and understanding that they want that quality of life till they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s, even. People are taking care of their health more and taking care of their health earlier, not just in one way, but in so many ways, whether that's the way they exercise, the supplements they take, the quality of sleep, all of those things. As you zoom out and look at the industry, what would your advice be for new entrepreneurs who are entering this industry? What's critical to win in health and wellness?
Okay, two things come to mind. One is more general, and that is find something that you're really passionate about. Start there.
Mm.
Because when you're tested for the long hours and all the no's and the painful, all the things that come along with being successful, you're going to need to have a reason for why you're doing what you're doing that's bigger than just a paycheck. More specifically for fitness and wellness, I would put maybe not all, but most of my eggs in the basket of AI and modern technology. And I would focus there. And I know you'll agree with that because you're doing that yourself. The consequences of AI and modern technology in health and wellness are more accentuated than in other industries. And that's because the products that the health and wellness industry offers are basically health outcomes, right? You want to increase stamina, you want to improve your cardiovascular health, you want to lose weight, you want to become more mobile or flexible. And all of these things, which I consider to be the customer jobs or the products that we offer in health and wellness, are predicated on data and math. And that is where AI excels, particularly. We are in for major transformation. And the whole paradigm of how this industry provides service to the consumer is going to change dramatically. And one great example, I'm sure you're familiar with, and many in the audience will be, is GLP-1s.
Mhm.
GLP-1s are the most prescribed medication in the history of medicine. Something like 1 in 7, if not by now, this is a little bit of an old statistic, 1 in 7 Americans have already taken at least one course of a GLP-1. It's the closest thing that we've ever had to taking a magic pill and being in good shape. And the truth is, though, that it's really just the tip of the iceberg. AI is rapidly accelerating. That's probably even an understatement. Rapidly accelerating new drug discovery, more intelligence on biologics, the function of biological functions in the body. And so, even if you look at what sort of things right now are in late stage clinical trial, stage 2, stage 3, it's mind blowing. And so, all of this is coming down the pipe very, very quickly. And if I was just diving into this space, that's where I'd be concentrating.
Where can people learn more about what you do with Well Built Ventures?
If you go to my website, garrettmarshall.com, that's a good jumping off point to all the stuff that I'm involved with. Otherwise, wellbuilt.ventures is the company's web address.
Thanks so much for your time today. I learned so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hopefully, we can do it again.